Speaking of travel, I know I should play more, but speaking of travels, if you've ever wondered what it's like to travel with one of these, it can be a real challenge. Now, most of my experiences, fortunately, in flying with this thing was prior to 9/11. I can't even imagine doing it now. It's hard enough to travel without anything. And a lot of my colleagues out there, I mean, they post the horror stories that they experience with their instruments, being shipped. But what I used to do is I would go and I was able to buy for half economy fare. I could buy a seat, and it would sit sort of next to me. And the first time I flew was actually to go audition for my school in Philadelphia. And so I got the tickets, and I had my boarding pass, and I was flying on, I don't know if Agony, we used to call it Agony Airlines, Allegheny Airlines. The only time I ever got sick twice was going on Allegheny Airlines, flying into Erie, Pennsylvania. And so anyway, I've got the base, and I had to go with a turboprop, so I had to walk across the tarmac to get to the plane. So I walk across tarmac. The ground crews go, "You can't take that on there." I have boarding pass. I'm going, and I just kept going. And I get to the stairs, and I look up, and there's this. They were stewardesses at that time. There's a stewardess at the top of the stairs, and she's like white as a sheet. It's like she just saw a ghost. Says, "You can't bring that in here." I said, "I got a boarding pass. I'm coming in." And I start walking up the stairs. So as I'm walking up the stairs, I take a look, and leaning out of the cockpit is the pilot. And he's got this smirk on his face. And if you fly at all, the pilot has the last word. If he says you don't get on, you don't get on. It's just the end of the story. So I'm coming up, and I'm waving my boarding pass, and I get to the top of the stairs, and she says, "What do we do? What do we do? We can't put this in the plane." And by that time, the pilot's outside his cockpit. He's leaning on the door, and he's got this great big grin, and he says, "Hey, don't worry. A friend of mine used to play one of those things, and we schlepped it all across Europe. This is what you got to do." And he showed me where to put it in the bulkhead, how to put the extends on, and he gave me all the to-dos so that I knew in future how to travel. But I mean, so it was fun. But I did a few times. I was always had to be the first guy on, and I was always the last guy off. But it was fun. One time I was flying across. I had to go across Canada from Toronto to Vancouver, and I was taking a 747, and I got on and the smaller planes were actually, believe it or not, were actually easier than the big planes because the armrests go up and down and stuff. And the big planes, you got these big clunky armrests. So I get on the plane, and it was packed, and I way at the back. So I go back to I drag this thing through the aisles back to the back, and so the flight attendant is looking. He says, "This is silly." He says, "I got an idea." He says, "Come here." He takes this end of the base. I take the other end. We lift it up. We walk the entire distance of the entire 747 over everybody's heads, and we get to the front of the plane, and then we get to the spiral staircase. He says, "Okay, we're going up." We take this and we wind the base up the spiral staircase up to the first class lounge. And so this is the lounge with, you get up there, white shag rug on everything, and a beautiful pastry tray, and a whole bunch of drunken businessmen. And but the seats were really wide. It was great, so we put it in there. I said, "Can I sit with it?" "No." "Can I have some of the pastries?" "No." But my base flew first class, and it actually about 2 or 3 times the base flew first class, and I did not. Anyway, adventures in travel with the base. Nice thing about when you play with an orchestra, the bases actually have it easy because the stage crew, basically, we have these, we call them appropriately coffins. We got these great big hard cases. We put the bases in the case, we close it up, and we don't see it till we get to the next hall. The stage guys move it all. So for the purposes of that, it's very easy. So now here's a question for you. If you are if you write a novel, what are you called? I can't tell if people are talking. All I see are masks. Well, you're a novelist, right? A novelist or whatever. If you write poetry, you're a A poet, and you know it. Okay. Now, if you're writing music, what are you called? You're a composer. There's a story that they went to Beethoven's grave and dug up the grave, pulled out the casket. They opened the casket, and they take a look, and there's Beethoven, and he's madly erasing music on manuscript. And they say, Beethoven, what are you doing? He says, I'm decomposing. It's a terrible joke, but it's there. Okay. Anyway, now the thing is, when you're a composer of music, it's not just you're writing a piece, a bunch of notes. You also have to decide, especially if you're writing for, say, orchestra, you have to decide when I have a melody, who's going to play it? Who's going to sound best playing it? What instrument do you give? So if you've got like a light, fast, fluffy passage that's a fun, what instruments might you give it to? A flute or a violin or something like that. The high instruments. And if it's slow and sad and and peasant-like, who are you going to give it to? Bass or the tuba, the low instruments. Okay. So I'm going to play you a little bit of a piece. How many of you have ever heard of the Carnival of the Animals? I know some of you have. Okay, this, Camille Saint-Saëns was a French composer, and he wrote this. It's actually a parody, but he wrote this piece, and he wrote a little piece of music that represented different animals in the carnival. Okay, this is the one he gives to the basses. You can tell me what you think it is. What animal? So what animal do you think it might be? An elephant. Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? A what? A dachshund. No, not a dachshund. Or a very big fat dachshund. If we let our dachshund keep eating the way she wants, she would have been a big dachshund. Yes, in fact, it is the elephant. Okay. And so now here's I'm going to put one other little excerpt that I have here. And this is from a piece, also several little pieces, but what this is called Pictures from an Exhibition by the Russian composer Mussorgsky. And what he did is he had a friend who was an artist and had the showing of all these little paintings and things. And he wrote, basically strolling down the gallery, with a promenade music between pictures. He wrote a piece of music that represented each of these pictures. So the excerpt that I want to play is played by all the strings, and it's basically what it does. It represents two Jews walking down the street. One is a little timid, little firmy guy, little a really religious guy wearing the black coat and the fur hat and the payas, the curls, and he's very timid, and he's represented by the high trumpet, and you hear next to him, and his name is Shmuel. Next to him is Samuel Goldenberg. And he is one of the leaders of the community. He's well dressed. He stands erect. He's proud. And this music reflects Samuel Goldenberg. So this is the Samuel Goldenberg music, and it's played by all the strings. So you can hear in this music, thank you. Okay, you can stay. you can hear in this music the pride of this man in this part, and so that's the use of how of different ways that you can use certain instruments to represent a certain feeling or something. Let's see.